to talk as well about, in part 2, about the transitional provision and the reference there to Section 28A of the Principal Act as inserted by Section 10 of this Act. And of course this relates to the question of when the person will be able to cash up their 1 week of their annual leave, as my colleague Darian Fenton was saying. So it describes an entitlement year, and that is outlined in the bill as to what an entitlement year is, which is a period of 12 months continuous employment beginning on the anniversary of the employee's employment and includes the period of 12 months continuous employment described in Section 16.2. Now, when you look at the provisions in when a person looks at the provisions in 28A, this is the bit that says an employee may request a portion of annual holidays be paid out, and it goes through the process on which that will happen. Originally, of course, that was going to be informed and voluntary. It's no longer going to be informed and voluntary. So that suggestion that was made to people about how this was going to be very much something that would only happen when employees wanted, and that everybody would understand the full implications and be very, very clear it was voluntary. Well, of course, that provision is no longer there. But anyway, there are some other requirements around how an employee will be able to request a portion of their annual holidays being paid out, and it's in writing, and it may or may not be on several separate occasions. For example, the employer must consider the request, advise the employee in writing as to whether or not they agree. The employer, of course, can decline the request. Now, actually, one of the things in all the rhetoric about this and about Labor not supporting workers' choice, and we had all the high dudgeon about property rights. Whose rights is this? Whose holidays are they? It's the employees' holidays, of course, and we're trying to stop them being able to use their property, their holidays. Well, actually, of course, if people were honest, and this was the bit that those opposite didn't actually mention, of course the absolute right is with the employer here. So in terms of property rights and all of the great rhetoric around that tonight from Acton National, actually the property rights effectively in relation to buying out holidays sit with the employer who can deny the request, but more than that, they can actually have a policy. They can have an absolute blanket policy that says that nobody will be able to buy their week's annual leave in this workplace. That's our policy, full stop, tough luck. So I'd quite like to see if perhaps Ms Roy would like to get up and explain the property right there and about the choice situation there, and given we got such a bollocking from her really about that, perhaps she can explain why it's okay for employers to be able to do that. So in 28A, this is all set out about the process, and then through there we've got a whole range of requirements about how this will work, the payment for annual holiday paid out, and how that will be done, and what happens if it's incorrectly paid out. There'll be the requirement to request payment prohibited, a requirement that an employee must make a request under Section 28A for a portion to be paid out, must not be a term or condition of an employee's employment. Well, we agree with that. We certainly agree with that. It goes on through this section to have, as I said, a policy preventing payout, and also provisions around the Labour Inspectorate and providing that the Labour Inspector may in fact determine payout. This section applies if an employer has agreed to an employee's request to pay out a portion of the employee's annual holidays under 28A, which is the bit that the transitional provision applies to. But the employer and employee cannot agree on A, the portion that are to be or have been paid out, or B, the amount that the employer is required to pay the employee for the annual holidays that are to be or have been paid out. So there's quite a lengthy bit in there. Now my point really is in relation to the transitional provision in 28A that probably the reality is that this year, before employees may be able to access this, depending on whether or not their employer has a policy about whether they can access the right to cash up their holidays, that year is probably going to be necessary to deal with all the arrangements.
The Honourable